Some sermons pop, and some sermons flop. Some sermons soar. They take the congregation on a journey where grace and the hope of sanctification meet. Some sermons, they get stuck in the mud. They keep the congregation in the same place they were when they walked in. The wheels spun, but no one moved. What am I getting at? It's the difference between powerful preaching and average preaching. And before you object, this isn't about being the loudest or most charismatic. It's about doing the extra work to take any sermon from decent to exceptional. The good news is any of us can do this because average preaching exegetes the text, generally illustrates it, and generally applies it. But powerful preaching takes what average preaching does generally and goes the extra mile to target the untouched walls of bad theology and underlying heart issues of those who listen. At the end of the day, powerful preaching convicts and offers hope. Powerful preaching helps people see more clearly. But if you want to go from preaching average sermons to preaching powerful sermons, you can't forget the following two things. That's what I'm going to cover in this video, the 2 elements for better sermons. But hey, before we get into that, I have a free guide just for you as my way of saying thanks for being on this video. It's my 10-step guide to writing a sticky sermon. You can get it right here at preachinglead.com/guide. Just go right there, download that guide, and it's going to be a great companion to help you go from blank page to finished sermon. So go right there, grab that. All right, let's get into this. The first thing is powerful preaching distinguishes, and the second thing, powerful preaching specifies. These 2 things go together, so let's talk about them together. We must begin with the hard work of exegetical work. We must know the context of the original audience and the author. We must know what the original aim of the text was, the author's intended meaning. Then we must explain or expose the text's meaning. But we're not done there. We must remember that we are not just focused on what the text says when we are crafting a powerful sermon. Powerful preaching considers the people who are receiving the message just as much as it considers the text. Average preaching thinks of the people receiving the message almost as an afterthought to the text. We must remember that every person who hears a sermon we preach is coming to that sermonic moment with bad theology and heart issues that are under the surface and largely untouched. So, we must distinguish what the text means and what it doesn't mean, or what it speaks against that people in our hearing may believe or do. Additionally, in every sermon, there are an assortment of real-life applications you can make from a single text. Where average preaching stays general, powerful preaching gets specific. The specificity of a message is typically shown in the illustrations and applications of a message. So, let's work through an example together on how we can distinguish and specify. Let's consider 2 key texts, Matthew 9:9-11, and Matthew 10:2-4. Matthew 9:9-11 says, "As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax office, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he got up and followed him. While he was reclining at the table in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?'" Now Matthew 10:2-4. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. So there's a lot here between these 2 texts from Matthew's gospel. But let's ask ourselves what key point from this text needs to be illuminated for our day and time. Additionally, let's consider what underlying beliefs or actions of our people does the exegesis of this text go against. Okay, our exegetical work would expose the fact that in the first century, for a Jewish rabbi to call a tax collector to follow him was equivalent to calling a traitor of the Jewish people to follow him. Additionally, it would expose the fact that Jesus called a very diverse group of Jewish men to follow him. Namely, we would see the opposite ends of the political spectrum represented within Jesus' disciples. Specifically, if tax collectors were on one end, zealots would be on the opposite end. Average preaching would take this and say that Jesus is a wall breaker and bridge builder. He takes people who don't think the same and maybe even disagree with each other, and he brings them together. Powerful preaching doesn't stop there. It says that, but it would also distinguish this. Jesus doesn't fit into the political or social boxes we've created. Jesus doesn't fit into one political party or another. Powerful preaching would specify King Jesus didn't play partisan politics in his day. Your belief that the people in the other party are the enemy doesn't line up with King Jesus. Christ followers are not to have their allegiance with the party of the elephant or the donkey, but the party of the Lamb. Christ followers are to engage in a different politic, one that is outside of both political parties. It is a politic that is informed by the Word of God, motivated by the Spirit of God, and governed by the love of God. So, when you see another moment of partisan rhetoric, how will you respond? Will you resolve to hold both parties accountable? Will you see your allegiance as with King Jesus? Do you see the difference between he's a wall breaker and bridge builder and getting very specific about how this applies to our day and time specifically? When you distinguish and specify, you have the ingredients to a powerful sermon that goes from average to excellent. Now I'm curious, how do you seek to specify and distinguish in your preaching? What do you do? What kind of questions do you ask? I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. Hey, at the end of the day, this is all about strong sermon preparation. It's about what you think about and what you process through and what you pray through as you prepare your sermon to write it so that you can preach it. So if you want to go deeper on sermon preparation, be sure to check out this video where I talk about the 6 pillars of strong sermon preparation. I'll see you there.